So this has to be, it's good that you have the conflict, Alonsoji. And I will listen to your second question now. And after that, we take a break. We take a break, and then you can, you need not be so serious. I see that you're so serious, and I just love you for it. And after the break, there can be cacophony. You can all be talking. And it's Shakti time. Now it is Shiva time. Okay, what's the second question?
The second question has been a little bit molded. So, the thing that was, how do you say, handcuffed my spiritual growth was the thing that I was just accepting and letting everything flow, not understanding, going in the understanding of everything and trying maybe to change, because I was, the second question used to be that why try to change things if God planned them that way? For example, knowing our ecological layer of the cabbage.
Lovely, lovely. Good question, very good question. Now, the human being is actually a masked form of God. Now, you set out from here to India. Alonso Ji starts out on a journey from here to India. And he wants to go to Himalayas, he wants to go to Benares, he wants to go to the Golden City where Amma and Bhagavan are. And he wants to visit several other places. Now, actually, after going to India, he may change his mind. He may spend more time at the Golden City and less time in the Himalayas. And whereas before he started the journey, he may wanted to spend more time in Himalayas. So, the person who is incarnated as Alonso Ji is also God. So, God gave the destiny. God is experiencing his destiny. Now, God is feeling that I don't like this. But the God doesn't know that he is the God who also gave himself the destiny as a human being. And therefore, you're completely legitimate if you find the destiny somewhat suffocating, then to go for a second creation. The first creation is the actual destiny, the horoscope. Then the second creation is use the power of thought and the power of feeling and the power of charity and the power of worship and the power of puja to change undesirable things in the first form of destiny, which is the horoscope. So it's perfectly in the fitness of things. And you just got to look at India, and you just got to look at America, for example, which are civilizations in contrast. Think with me, please. In India, we are talking too much about God, and all people are very, very passive. The moment there is a problem, immediately you run to a temple, you run to a God and say, oh God, take away this pain and the suffering from me. But you never use the power of thought and the power of feeling and the power of creative thinking in order to solve your problem. You want a divine intervention for the smallest thing. Now you come to America, where God is not dependent upon so steadfastly as the Indian people depend on God. Whole of America is based on the power of clear thinking, the power of deep thinking, the power of invention, the power of discovery. And look at the achievement of America and look at the achievement of India on the material plane. Now America is like this, India is like this. Now spiritually, India is a genius. India is like this, America is like this. But I am talking about solving the problems of life by the application of the power of consciousness and the power of thought and the power of awareness and the power of charity. So who has done better work, in America or in India? The Americans have done better work because they're thinking. And if man is not going to think, then is he man? Because a stone doesn't think, a goat doesn't think, but man has to think. Because God gave him this awesome power, the power in thought, the power in consciousness. And if you're not going to use it, and you're going to be extremely passive, and God is prepared for his part, God is prepared to take you on as a co-creator. If you want to be very passive, he says, okay, you be very passive and very stupid, you're my bosom friend. And if you want to be a brilliant thinker, then God says, I'm also happy to work with you, come, we'll do a partnership. So he is prepared to take you for any stand that you are prepared to take. Now, what is your stand? I'm asking you. Do you want to be a very passive element, very passive, unthinking, invoking God for every small thing, and you being lazy, intellectually lazy? Or do you want to work with God as a very creative partner with God? I'm saying work with God as a very creative partner. Because the whole of, you can look at the whole world. So everywhere there is more achievement in any sphere, in the spiritual sphere, in the material sphere. There people are working in partnership with God, but they don't know it. Most of them may not know it. They're partnership. And they're very into it. They're sweating it out. They're thinking night and day. They're toiling with their consciousness, with their minds. And so God never asked you to be very passive and unquestioning. No. That's your personal stand. And it's for you to re-examine at this point whether you're happy with that stand or you want to revise that stand. You want to revise and update that stand and be more thinking and be more active and yet not lose touch with God. Yet not lose touch with God. You're not going on an ego trip saying that I don't need God, I'll do everything myself. You're not on that trip. Thank God for it. So you got to decide which bus you want to board.
Just the very last question. I understand perfectly what you're right now saying, but I realize how my life has been very difficult for me because one side of me wants to be this very passive, another part of me is so active, and the result of my life right now is a mixture of both of them, where I ask everything to God, and everything has been given to me as I have asked to, but there is also this part of me that has gone through very difficult things, and even though I don't want to, I work really hard for them, and they happen. So I understand, now I understand this part of what you're saying, and I have in my mind a structure that for the spiritual path I have to become this passive person.
No, that's not necessary. Not necessary at all. You can be very active in thought, and you can be a great thinker, and yet you can have a fantastic partnership with God. Fantastic partnership. Like the mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujam, who's known throughout the world, a devotee of God, and intense thinker, Gemini ascendant, intellectual person, and recognized throughout the world by the grand masters in mathematics, but a devotee of God, not a rationalist. Please understand. A devotee of God, understands God, knows the scriptures. So you got to decide on which wavelength you want to tie up with God. You got to, and in the afternoon I'm going to show you one or two slides to drive home the point that God is going to respond to you as you want Him to respond. Because you are saying, I'm dependent on God, and He's actually saying, no, I'm dependent on you. That's His verdict. So He's called Bhakta Paradina. That is, He's dependent on the Bhakta or the devotee. Because the devotee's disposition matters to Him. According to that, He will respond. So you've got to decide what disposition you want to take, what stand you want to take. Right? Now Shakti time. Go on.
One last question. This activity.
So shall we take the next step?
Yes.
You're happier now?
Yes.
So one has to accept oneself so completely that there is not the slightest desire to change yourself for anybody else, however great that person may be. That's the key to the spiritual life. That is, whatever you are, and you have got to feel so good with all the angels and the demons inside that you are not prepared to exchange this so-called life which you judged to be wretched a little while ago, and you don't want to exchange it for any sublime life of any saint, any successful life of any great guy like the President of America. You're not interested in exchanging it. That is an important milestone in the spiritual life which you have to cross. Just be yourself. Anybody crossed that milestone? I'm sure many of you have crossed that milestone. I'm happy. Yeah. That's so important to cross. So that there's no struggle in life anymore. So I have to continuously thank Sri Ricardo ji and all the technological team because without them working so conscientiously, I won't be, I'm all wired up. I won't be able to speak and you're not going to hear me. Yeah.
I wanted to comment. That I have found that through the teachers that I have been with, I've heard the truth.
A little louder.
I have heard the truth.
Okay.
And I knew when I was hearing the truth. I don't know how I knew. I did not know then, but I knew it was true, what I was hearing. And over the years, because this has been a number of years that I've been on the path, it has become clearer. The insights have come on their own through my own Sadguru. And I have learned to trust that. That was the hardest part, was to trust.
But that trust should be in the very beginning.
I know. I trusted
Better
all
late
my
than never.
teachers.
Yeah, better late than never.
Excuse me?
Better late than never.
Better late than never, absolutely. Yes, because I would see my teachers, and so that's what I want. That's what I want. And I would compare myself. And I've got a long way to go, or whatever. And I came to realize that I was on my own path, and that grace had a part in this. And the understanding, the clear understanding, even though I was so impatient that I wanted it all at one time, I have come to realize that it happens only when it happens, with the insights of maybe something that happened before, like we were talking about before, suffering through pain or whatever. The realizations of how that served me have eventually come to clarify themselves, and how that pain served me. What I feel now is that I am struggling with the mind, and I followed Ramana Maharshi and Papaji, and the quiet mind is what I most want. And even though these insights are coming through the mind, they come through a different part, like through the heart mind or something. But there's a part of my mind that just will not be still. In fact, it doesn't even let me sleep at times. It's, like you said, it was fragmented. And it's not that I want to tame it, it's just that I want to be in peace.
Yeah, I've got to, if I look at your chart, then I may be able to say more whether there are any remedial measures which can rest the restless Shakti, or whether the restless Shakti is so terribly active that I have to tell you that this may be part of your fate. You just have to go along with Shakti as the restless companion. You've got to go along. So I'll be able to say one way or the other. And but it's great that you have been on the path for so many years and that you got trust, which is the most important thing. Congratulations. Keep going on the path. So we move forward. So you got to work for many days and probably many weeks and some months to actually see how the illusion of duality takes birth in the human consciousness itself. Shiva, as the perceiver, commits the mistake because he is beclouded by Shakti, and he takes himself to be the observed. The observed is this human form you see in thought. This human form, you see that form in your thought and you say, this is me. Then you see your friend as another form in thought, and then you say, that is the other. And the perceiver is Shiva. And one has to constantly work with that meditation and do that time and again to see how all the illusions of the self and the other take birth. There is, in man's dualistic world, there is the self and then there is the other. And the self is polarized against the other. The other is polarized against the self. So you've got to understand how that arises. That's arising here. It has its genesis in the way consciousness has been structured by the divine and in the way that consciousness is functioning. In that very functioning is the incorporation or implantation of Maya in the form of duality. So that is why Krishna is saying, Devi hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. It's difficult to cross this Maya. Therefore, be devoted to me, and if you're devoted to me, it's easy to cross. Because what actually happens when you're devoted to the divine? Now take two people, A and B. Now A is devoted to the divine. Sorry, you may actually be more devoted than her, but in this example, you're less devoted. So you are the devotee and you are not devoted to the divine. Now the person who is devoted to the divine has an intuition that God is real. And therefore, thought works so much the lesser. Shakti is working so much the lesser. When Shakti works so much the lesser, is Maya easier to cross over? Yes or no? Yeah, that's why it is so important to be anchored to the divine. So what Krishna is saying is, be anchored to me so that you may cross the Maya more easily. Because then the Shakti will be rested. She will not be overactive. She will not be overthinking on useless things, because that's what she's doing all the time, useless thinking. And so we got to work with this time and again, not just in this retreat, and then we immediately got something tremendous. So in the Hindu scriptures, Vyavasaya is the name given for Mahavishnu and Shiva. It is that energy which gives the stability or the staying power, which is essentially the staying power is timelessness and the fickleness is time, right? All change is in time and changelessness is not in time. So Vyavasaya is the name in the scriptures for Mahavishnu and Shiva, and Vyavasaya Atmika means resolute without any vacillation, and Vyavasaya Atmika because totally undistracted. The intelligence is steady and sharp. It is very steady and sharp. For example, when it is looking at something, it is not distracted, so it can keep paying attention without getting diverted. That's the nature of that prajna when it is awakened. And so learning occurs. Learning is occurring as a natural thing. Okay. Now I said, study the scripture, because the scripture, whether you study the Christian scripture or you study an Islamic scripture or you study the Hindu scripture or the Buddhist scripture, the scriptures are so vast, they are an ocean of learning. They are not just one book, so many books. And in the Hindu world, there are countless number of sacred books, and they all throw light on different aspects. Here, the supreme there is a transcendental aspect to the Supreme who is Sachitananda Parabrahma in the Moola Mantra of oneness, and that is Shiva in the retreat. We are referring that as Shiva. Then there is a lower nature of the Supreme Reality. The Supreme Reality has a higher nature which is transcendental, which is there as the imperceptible inner self. Then, because the whole world is created by the Supreme also is the architect of the material manifestation. It is also everything in the material manifestation. So, bhumirapo nalo vayuhu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha. So the God Krishna is speaking, the avatar Krishna is speaking. He is saying the earth element, bhumihi, the earth element, and apas, water element, analaha, fire element, vayuhu, air element, kam, space element, and manas, the feeling nature, and then the intelligence or the intellect, and the ego, sense of egoism, ahankara. These constitute the eightfold lower manifestations of mind. He is telling all that is me only. But my lower aspect, the earth element, that means all the physical celestial bodies, the entire solar system, all the galaxies, and then the water, the element called water, apas, then the element called analaha, fire, then the element called vayuhu, air or wind, then the element called kam, space. Now, I'd like to tell you something about in the year 1980 or something. So I was telling my guru, Sri Bhagavan, that very often I like to do a namaste to space, because I know that that space is sacred, that it is the divine. It has been created by the divine. And if Shakti completely becomes whole and becomes integral and becomes quiet, then you can feel all these things. That the divine is in the stone, the divine is in the tree, the divine is in the cockroach, is in the cat. But if Shakti is distraught and wandering, then the intelligence is not there as sensitivity. Intelligence has sensitivity to perceive this transcendental aspect of God. You're more gross, you're more dense, and thought is wandering. So thought can't pay attention to anything. It's so fickle. So then how can you be sensitive to a tree? How can you be sensitive to space? So here the teaching is that the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, the wind element, and empty space, which is also called ether, and manas is the feeling nature. So we know that very well because we are that. And then the intellect, and then the processing unit, like the computer, we think, we keep thinking, the thinking faculty, and then ahankara, the sense of self. Even the ego is created by God. So count now. So bhumihi, 1, water, 2, fire, 3, then air and wind, 4, empty space, 5, manas, 6, then intellect, buddhi, 7, ahankara is 8. So there are 8-fold lower manifestations of that supreme. Only the lower, not the higher. The higher is invisible. All this is visible. This is the world of the senses, right? You're following? Yes. Yeah. So there is a visible part of God, but we are not able to respect the visible part of God because of the wandering nature of Shakti. And if Shakti is silent, we may be able to sense this. But because Shakti is vagrant and is too restless, they're not able to have that sensitivity without which you can't perceive this. But with the quietening of Shakti, then you may be sensitive to every one of these elements. Ramana Maharshi said, the mountain is God, Arunachala. You know it as his devotee. He said, Shiva is this mountain, And then, if you read the Hindu scriptures, then throughout India, Ganga is worshipped as Shakti. The river Ganga is worshipped as Shakti. In India, they worship every object as